So thanks everyone for joining us tonight. My name's Claire and I'm the business librarian at Glenview Public Library. Tonight's program is Over 40 and Hired, and it's presented by Anita Jenke, the executive director from the Career Transition Center. This program is presented in partnership by Glenview, Indian Trails, Northbrook, Skokie, and Vernon area public libraries as a part of the Lake Cook Career Collaborative. So you can find out more about this group and see more job and career offerings on our website. The website is careercollab.org, and I'll also go ahead and add the website in the chat. So if you have any questions that come up during tonight's program, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A or the chat, and they'll be answered throughout the program. And then we'll also email out the PowerPoint and the workbook after the program. So please welcome Anita.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, my name's Anita Jenke. I'm the executive director at the Career Transition Center. I'm looking forward to working with you all tonight. And I will go ahead and we will get the PowerPoint started. So thank you for joining me tonight to discuss Over 40 and Hired. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, the Career Transition Center is located in the city of Chicago. We work with clients across the metro area and the US. We're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to empower professionals to find meaningful employment. We provide career coaching and programming to support people in employment transition, either whether they're employed, unemployed, or unfulfilled, and all of our services are offered virtually. So let's talk about our agenda tonight. I've shared with Claire a workbook that will be sent out afterwards that has resources, a resume checklist, sample resumes, cover letter checklist, sample cover letters, and other tools. And I hope you'll find that useful. We're going to talk a little bit about the current employer environment, managing ageism, both the internal and the external dynamics, smart career management, the importance of online marketing, LinkedIn, and keeping your skills current. So we are in a different labor market than we were during the pandemic, but nonetheless, it still requires you to be nimble and to be flexible, and it requires you to have a strong, savvy resume and LinkedIn profile. I think it's important to adjust your expectations and the industries you're considering and employers that will benefit from your life experience and skills. Perhaps in the past you worked at a large employer, might be worth considering a smaller employer. Right now I have a number of clients who worked in big tech. They've gotten laid off and they're now thinking that rather than going back into big tech, they'll look for tech jobs within corporations and just pivot a little bit. For those folks, there is a lot of demand from, like banks and corporations for tech people. Be prepared for virtual and in-person networking and interviewing, and also be prepared to demonstrate that you're tech savvy. So let's talk a little bit about overcoming obstacles, the social constructs and self-talk. So let's think about some of the age stereotypes. I'd be curious to know if anybody could put in the chat a couple of stereotypes they've heard about older workers. Just type in a few, just stream of consciousness. Anything you've heard, anything you think, anything you've read about, that they're not tech savvy. That is correct. That is one that I think we all worry about, and that employers might make the assumption about. That they're slow learners, indeed. That they prefer work in the office versus remote. Indeed, that's a good example. Yes, these are all good examples of the things that we've read about or are concerned about. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these. You all have touched on them, in fact. Low energy, inflexible, feeling superior to their younger peers, used to hierarchy and support, not self-sufficient or fast learners. no longer passionate about their career, resistant to change, not on trends and tech, overqualified and overpriced. Okay, these I think are commonly accepted assumptions or biases. But let's talk about and offset that with what are some of the positive age attributes, because indeed there are quite a few. Reasoning and planning skills, stick-to-itiveness, strong interpersonal and relationship skills. Those of us in our 40s and beyond have achievements. We have gotten awards. We understand the industry. Many times we're subject matter experts. We have maturity and professionalism. We've been leaders, and we understand the importance of being accountable. These are all things that employers still value. So this is important that you take stock of yourself in a positive way and ensure that you take ownership of these and make sure they show up in the way you talk about yourself, the way you describe yourself on your resume, your cover letter, and LinkedIn. So let's take a little deeper dive. Indeed, there are a lot of stereotypes about younger and older workers. So let's talk about these, because I don't find them necessarily true. That's why they're stereotypes. Younger workers, physically able, healthy. Well, I have several board members that are in their late 60s, early 70s doing half marathons. So I don't think that's necessarily accurate. Younger workers are easier to supervise. I think it goes very much by the individual. If they're flexible versus we're more punctual. I don't know. I work with a mix of younger and older, mid-career professionals, and I find it, again, it's very much based on temperament, not necessarily age. Again, I think it's important that you be aware of them, but don't let them, dominate your thinking, rent space in your head. I think it's very important that you look at these and assess which ones apply to you and make sure that you can demonstrate them. Older workers are known for being reliable, punctual, loyal, mature, stable, have industry experience, a strong work ethic. Indeed. Salary expectations. I think that's very dependent on the individual, because I see a lot of older workers who have now, they make good money. They're looking at a second career. Often they want to do something that's more specialized, and they'd rather focus in on a specific aspect, maybe instead of all communications, maybe media and crisis relations. And I think people have more flexibility on salary than often they're given credit for. And as for, energy level, I think that's, again, very dependent on the individual. So let's talk about smart career management. Before you embark on your job search, whether it's because you're unemployed, underemployed, or you're maybe dissatisfied and want to find a new opportunity, I think it's important that you inventory your skills, your knowledge, your strengths, get to know yourself a little bit. There's some online assessments, ONET Online. It's a free assessment from the Department of Labor. Gives you an opportunity to kind of assess yourself and maybe touch base with what you'd like to do versus what you've been doing. Consider whether it's important to research feasible opportunities. Go on LinkedIn, go on Indeed, do some research, see who's hiring, see what kinds of opportunities are out there. Then it's important to develop a compelling case. And I think that means rethinking your brand statement, rethinking what you're highlighting on LinkedIn and on your resume in terms of your strengths. And I think it's a very important time to touch base with your network. You should be constantly networking and not just when you need them. And I see William raised his hand. Yes. You want to put your question in the chat?
Let me see if I can unmute him. Just a second here.
Sure.
William, are you able to unmute? If not, please go ahead and put your question in the chat.
Well, while he's doing that, I'm going to also just clarify that at the Career Transition Center, we've broken the job search process into discovery, planning, and action. And it's often helpful to know where you're at in the process. Discovery is, I'm doing a rethink. I'm not quite sure that I want to do what I've done in the past, and I need to do the exploration we talked about before. Planning is, I now know what I want to do, but I have to review and revise my brand statement, my resume, cover letter, my LinkedIn profile, and I need to start figuring out who's going to hire the kinds of positions I've identified. And then action is, you now have target jobs, target employers, you're ready to go to market, you're applying for jobs, you're networking, and you're interviewing. Okay, I guess William did not put anything in the chat. Okay, I'll wait to
Looks
see.
like he just put in a question, what website for the online career testing?
On ONET Online, it's a Department of Labor website.
Is it ONET?
ONET Online. Mm-hmm. Oh, I see a question in the chat. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Claire. So let's talk about, when talking with recruiters and employers, here are some of the things they're telling me that they're seeking in employees. People who can work within a team structure, who can verbally communicate with others, who are good at identifying problems, solving them, and escalating them to management, when needed, making judgments under pressure, obtaining information, planning, organizing, prioritizing work, the ability to analyze quantitative data, technical knowledge, proficiency with computer and software programs, reading and editing written reports. So these are some things that are important for employers. See, there's another question, something in the chat. If you're considering a career change or a second career, it seems that most of the contacts would not necessarily be in that second industry. How would you suggest going about networking for a different industry than the one you worked at? That's a good question. So that it's often I see people wanting to work in adjacent industries, like maybe they worked in banking for the last decade and they'd like to move out of banking into perhaps operations and healthcare on the financial side. So what I might do is think about the kinds of jobs I'd like to do, put in those job titles in the LinkedIn search bar, and then it'll give you the option of pulling up people and pulling up jobs. And I might start looking at people to see who in your network is a first or second degree connection that has a job similar to the one you're seeking. And if it's a first degree connection, maybe they worked at a hospital in the past, I might ask if they would have time for coffee or a Zoom chat. If it's a second degree connection, then I would reach out to your first degree connection and say, hey, Joe, I'm giving some thought to pivoting to healthcare. I see that you know Jim, who works at Advocate, and I was wondering if you might connect us. I'm not at the place where I'm looking for a job, but I am looking at the place where I want to gather some information. Here's my brand statement, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to share it with him and help me make that connection. Those would be some of the things that I would do. You could also ask folks that you know, do you know someone in this target industry? So those are some of the things that you might try. That's why it's important to cultivate, build, and nurture your network. So I've talked several times about the brand statement. One of the things I hope is that each of you has developed, whether you want to call it a brand statement or an elevator pitch. And I'm just going to share a very concise one for you. And I would recommend that you develop something similar to this that you can use verbally in writing on your LinkedIn and your resume. It should include your background and how you add value, a little bit of relevant experience, your career focus, and your ask. In this case, I'm a communications professional with expertise in media relations, crisis management, and strategic communications. I worked at theater companies in New York and have recently moved to Chicago. I've been involved volunteering with a small children's theater, providing expertise in social media content creation. I'm looking for a senior communications position with a large nonprofit theater company. I'm actively working to learn more about this and network into organizations like the Goodman Theater and the Lyric Opera. Could you suggest someone who'd offer good advice who might also be well connected? Something as simple as this would be a great email to send to someone you're hoping to network with or that you think could connect you to some good contacts. This tells them a little bit about you, kind of work you're looking for, and who your target employers are. It makes it easy for them to help you. Because if you just say, I'm unemployed and I'm looking for work, people often don't really know what to do with that. And by giving them this, it really helps them help you. The other thing I want to say about this is going into job search is very stressful, has a lot of ups and downs. And if you create something like this, it helps you look at yourself as a capable professional, somebody who has accomplishments. And it's a good thing. I might even print it out and stick it on your bathroom mirror just to remind yourself, I am a worthwhile professional. I'm going through a bit of a transition, but I'm going to land on the other side of this. And I think it's important to think positively and counteract the negative self-talk we have. Oh, I'll never find a job. Nobody will hire me. I'm 60. Nobody values my expertise anymore. No, that's not true. There's a place for everybody, and it's part of your job as somebody who's in transition is to manage the internal self-talk. Super important. So people are drawn to positive people and people who are clear and articulate in their needs. That's why it's so important, I think, to have a clear statement like that and to reach out to folks. Some of the things that I've seen during the pandemic that I thought were particularly creative and compelling on LinkedIn were things like, I saw a lot of people in tech doing this. They would post on LinkedIn. I had a great run at LinkedIn, wonderful experience, gained a mentor, learned so much. Unfortunately, I'm had to move on to my next opportunity, or depending on how you want to position it. I'm looking for my next great opportunity. I plan to reach out to folks in my network. If you hear of anything beforehand, please feel free to reach out. Very positive, complimentary to the employer, and it just sets you up with a nice opportunity to reach out and show that you're in a positive, empowered frame of mind. And I think that's very attractive, and I think that draws people to you. And it's a good way to start your search. So I'm going to guess that most of us have not done a great job keeping contact with our networks. So let's give some thought to how we might improve upon that. When somebody announces, for example, on LinkedIn that they've landed a new job or gotten a promotion, congratulate them, wish them luck. Don't just click the, applause button. Say, Claire, couldn't happen to a nicer person. I'm so pleased for you. Love to have coffee to celebrate in the new year. That really leaves an impression. Be adding people to your network. LinkedIn will send you examples of people you could add to your network. If you know them, consider reaching out to them. I'm somebody who, unless I've met them, I don't tend to accept invitations. I want to know everybody in my network. But workshops like this, great opportunity to build your network. You can see who else was in the workshop. You can see the facilitator, Claire, myself. I think it'd be appropriate to send a LinkedIn invitation with a note saying, I met you at Over 40 and Hired, love to join your network. So constantly be adding people, cultivating it. So let's say you're thinking of a career change. Use informational interviews to determine if a new career path makes sense for you. So you think you got laid off from big tech and you're thinking you want to work at maybe Bank of America to work on their new app that they're rolling out. Well, do you have a sense of what the culture would be at Bank of America? Do you have a sense of how they work? Would it be different than big tech? It might be worthwhile to find somebody who works at Bank of America to see if they could talk with you about the culture, give you a sense of who's in that department. Maybe they can connect you to someone who works in the department. Find out how they operate differently, or maybe the same. I also think it's important to not forget etiquette. Send a thank you email, or if they did something spectacular, send a handwritten note. I think that's important. Whenever I'm doing a networking meeting with someone, I try and listen and think, gosh, is there some way I can be reciprocal and help them, not so it's not a one-way street? You want to think about networking as it's not a transaction, it's a relationship you're building. So maybe they mentioned something that they were interested in, and you happen to have read an article recently. In the follow-up email, share the article with them. Follow up if you haven't already and send them a LinkedIn invitation. Maybe they mentioned that their son's interested in Notre Dame and your daughter went there. Offer to connect them so they can chat and talk about, she's interested, what's it like at Notre Dame, how strong is it in, nursing, whatever the case might be. Figure out a way to build and maintain that relationship so that you're memorable. I think it shouldn't be any big surprise that I mentioned that we're now going to be talking a little bit about LinkedIn. I've mentioned it numerous times. This is the most powerful social media tool for job search. Not to say that Facebook and others are not important. What I would say about those is the following. Twitter is a little bit of a mess right now. However, I could see the value in following on Twitter companies you're interested in. They may put out their press releases the first time, there initially. They may post job leads and want you to privately tweet back your resume. You might create a professional focused only Twitter account, and then if you have one that's, more personal, do whatever you've been doing with it. I think there could be some value in that. In terms of Facebook, I'm in the nonprofit sector. I see jobs posted all the time in my nonprofit network. What I would say about Facebook is it tends to be utilized more by people 40s, 50s, which is fine. And I do see jobs posted. So what I would say is make sure you have a professional, a nice profile picture. Make sure that you, manage the content. And I typically ask people not to tag me in photos. Not that I go anywhere anymore these days, but when I did. So you can maintain some control. And I think you can share with your network, I'm in transition, I'm considering opportunities in XYZ. If you all know anybody you think it'd be helpful for me to talk with, I'd really appreciate it. Or if you're aware of contract work, please let me know. I think that's totally valid. And I would say that depending on your network, that could net some results. All right, before we go on, I am interested, if you all could tell me, do tell me let me know if you're not on LinkedIn. Okay, I see one person. Anybody else? 2 people, okay. All right. 3 people. 4 people, okay. Okay, so we've got 19 people here, and it looks like maybe 4 to 5 are not on LinkedIn. Fair enough. So let's talk a little bit about that. My ex-brother-in-law is a rigger. He does manual labor in Nashville. He sets up for concerts. He's on LinkedIn. Tool and die makers, I know several, they're on LinkedIn. It really is the go-to place for employers and people who are looking for work. I would strongly encourage you to create a profile. It is a great place to find work. It's also a place where employers can find you. So it's very simple to set up. I would find a good professional image, a headshot, preferably, in something with a professional, collared shirt, maybe a jacket, nice blouse. Have a strong headline. That could be your current job title. It could be, nonprofit professional with expertise in fundraising that describes you. I would put your elevator pitch, your brand statement that we've just talked about. I would make sure that I put that in there. And then, like your resume, what you've got on your resume will work well on LinkedIn. Put in your work history, include your skills and expertise. And the next thing I would do is make sure you have at least 3 strong references. When employers and recruiters are looking at profiles, they are keen to see a photo, or keen to see who's in your network, your recommendations. When recruiters are actually using LinkedIn, they buy data mining packages. And what they're doing is they're putting in their keywords and their expectations. And then they're also putting in things like they want to see a profile that has a photo, that has 3 recommendations. They're putting in those parameters, and then they're looking through them. LinkedIn will pull it up. Make sure that when you create your profile, that you have an email that you're accessible by and a cell phone number. One of our coaches is a recruiter, and he says he sometimes is given 48 hours to come up with 10 candidates. So he wants to be able to do a phone screen very quickly. And if you have a cell phone number, he is much, much more likely to consider you and contact you. If he has to contact you through email or LinkedIn, that's a time delay. It's going to probably skip you over. That's frankly the truth. So if you want this LinkedIn to work for you, you need to make it easy for people to contact you. And once you have your profile, continue to refine it, build on it, and start looking for people that can be in your network. It's a great tool for being able to search for people, search for job postings, and applying directly through LinkedIn for the jobs. I just think it's just not possible, and it can hurt you, because when employers think, they're not tech savvy, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, that's exactly what they're going to think. And furthermore, on your resume, you need to have your name, cell phone number, email address, and your LinkedIn URL. Hyperlink it so they can go directly to your profile, because that's exactly what they're going to do. When I hire, as soon as I get the resume, I immediately hop on LinkedIn. I want to see who do they know. LinkedIn is a little bit less formal, so you can go longer. Resumes are typically 1 to 2 pages. LinkedIn really gives you an opportunity to tell people more about yourself. When people are in transition, they may be doing volunteer work, and there may not, I think it's important to put it on your resume, but you can go into more detail on LinkedIn, because they're looking at, okay, why are they unemployed? What's the gap? What are they doing with themselves? Oh, I see they've been taking some classes. They've got some new certifications. I see they're volunteering at their public library and the computer center. Great. That can help a lot when you're worried about gaps because of unemployment. Also, a new feature of LinkedIn, and this is at your discretion, it's a very individual decision. You can actually, let's say you had a gap because of caregiving for either homeschooling or for an elderly parent, you can put that job gap on LinkedIn and explain it. And I think that's very empowering to take control of your narrative. Brandy, yep, there you go. We are of the same mind. Randy also put in here, there's a new feature that has a job gap, history gap. I think that's important, because it's important to take control of your narrative. And frankly, here's my opinion. If I had to take time off to take care of my children during the pandemic, to do homeschooling, an employer held that against me, candidly, I don't know if I want to work for those people. That's my opinion. Everybody has to make their own choice. But yeah, Randy, great minds think alike. I appreciate you adding that very much. So I know there's a lot of reluctance for a range of valid reasons for why people don't want to put their photos on LinkedIn. But honestly, the profiles without a photo get less views and less interaction. It's important because honestly, they're going to get to see you at some point anyway if they bring you in for an interview. Short story here. I think you'll find this amusing. A couple of years ago, I had a client, very lovely woman, early 50s, very worried about age discrimination. She was in sales. So she found a software program where she could go in and manipulate her photo, reduce the wrinkles on her neck, which was what she was worried about. She changed it up, showed it to me, and I'm like, God, you look just like Juliana Margulies. This is beautiful. She goes, oh, that's great. I said, except for it's not you. This is not you. I said, I don't think this is the thing to do because I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You're beautiful as you are. And I think it's going to be a disconnect when you go into the office and they're like, who is this? I just am not sure that that's the way to go. So I want to encourage you to be authentic. So I'll just leave you with that story. I thought it was kind of amusing and also kind of sad. She did get a job and she did not use that photo. So moral of the story, she got a job anyway. Okay, we've talked a little bit about asking for referrals, but it doesn't hurt to talk about it again. So referral introductions are at the core of building relationships, but none of us want to put our contacts in an awkward position. So when you are asking for that introduction from your first degree contact to the second degree contact, trying to understand the strength of the relationship. You know, you might be able to see how they met, how long they've been connected. Write the introduction like I showed you earlier, and then say, I realize, if you're not comfortable connecting us, I certainly understand, but I would be so appreciative. Just make it easy for them in case for some reason they don't remember meeting the person. That can happen. So once we have a LinkedIn profile, what are some of the things we can do? Get the word out. Tell your network that you're looking for a new position, like I described earlier. Get LinkedIn recommendations from vendors, direct reports, supervisors, co-workers, and often what I find is if you say, would you consider writing me a recommendation? I'd be happy to draft it to get you started, and you can adjust it in any way you think best. That is much more likely to get a response. I've done this over and over, and that's what I recommend to our clients. So, let them know, ask them. If they say yes, then email it to them, then send them the link from LinkedIn so they can put in the recommendation. And then you can accept it once they've completed it, and be sure to follow up with a thank you and offer to do a recommendation for them. You cannot have too many of them. The other thing I like about LinkedIn is you can find out where people with your background are working. It's great for research. You literally can put in job titles and see, like sometimes I have clients that are just absolutely stuck and they just don't know how to describe themselves or how they want to pivot. And I'll say, put in that job title right in the search bar, and then pull up people who have that position, see how they're describing themselves, get some inspiration, then go back in, put that in, look for jobs, and look at what are the key words that employers are using. Pull those off and make sure you have them on your resume, because a lot of the employer applications processes, like their applicant tracking systems, use algorithms. Again, they're looking for keywords. You need to make sure you have those keywords on your resume. One of the advantages as an older worker that you've got is you have a lot of experience. You have a robust network. Those are two of the things younger people are up against. They don't have a robust network. They have a very small network typically until they get into their 30s. They also, frankly, they don't have a lot of skills. They don't have a lot of expertise. And this is where you're at a huge advantage. And that's why I think being an older worker is not as much of a disadvantage as you might think. And again, I've said this before, build your network before you need it. When you see people posting that they're unemployed, reach out to them, offer to be of help. People remember kindness, pay it forward. Okay, it is super important that you keep your skills up to date. I think this goes without question, but nonetheless, we're going to go through this. Make sure that you are very comfortable with all aspects of Microsoft Office. Make sure you're comfortable with Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, Google Meet, GoToMeeting, Google Hangouts, Adobe Connect, WebEx, etc. Make sure you're comfortable with them. Make sure if you have some good professional backgrounds that you've saved so you can upload them to these various platforms. When I was interviewing recently for a communications coordinator, you'd be surprised at the backgrounds people had that really needed a virtual background. You know, gobs of paper, just hot mess in the background, very unprofessional. Make sure that you're comfortable with virtual office storage platforms like Dropbox, Drive, OneDrive. I mean, I use all three regularly. Use this time in transition to earn a certification in your field, finish your degree. So LinkedIn has a training component called Linda. You could join Google's Premium, LinkedIn Premium, and get access to those. But a lot of public libraries actually have a subscription to Linda, and you could save some money and go through your library, take those classes, and get a certification. I do see, let me go back a slide, and I do see there are a few people that have questions. So let me go in and ask those. To that end, on current tech, what are your thoughts on taking the LinkedIn skill testing? Yeah, I think it's, Randy, you and I are on the same wavelength. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a very good idea. No, Randy, keep them coming. You're keeping me on my toes. Great. Also, too, make sure that you are doing something while you're in transition, if you're unemployed, underemployed, that's going to add value. Volunteer to use your social media skills. Volunteer to learn, at maybe the mission giving committee at your church to be on the committee managing the funds. There's so many things that you can do. Study your industry trends and research. Become a subject matter expert. I don't know if you all know this, but on LinkedIn, you can actually publish articles. Well, fantastic. Publish some articles on things that you're familiar with, that you know about. I have a friend who's a cybersecurity subject matter expert, and she's posting all the time. It's opened up a ton of new opportunities for her. Attend lunch and learn, seminars, conferences, trade shows. Even if you do it on your own time, a lot of them are now offering hybrid options or allowing you to attend virtually. Do it. I think I think you have nothing to lose and so much to gain. And speaking of SME, I would encourage you to join groups on LinkedIn. There are groups for everything: women in finance, African-American IT professionals, you name it, it's out there, nonprofit professionals. It's a place to build your network, learn from people, get job postings. They're very, very valuable. I would encourage you to join them. Okay, so let's talk about some places where you can upskill. Some of these are free, some of them have a small fee. There's a lot of online resources: Coursera, Udemy, again, LinkedIn Learning, edX, Skillshare, Treehouse. A lot of our tech people are talking about these. There's a range of things out there. This is just a small taste. This is a great time to upskill and learn. And I really hope that you'll take that opportunity. So let's talk about, you're now in that place where you're ready to interview. And I think first of all, we have to give people grace and realize that most people are not trained interviewers. They're not. So sometimes they're going to ask questions that are not appropriate, possibly illegal. So one of them would be, how old are you? And a response that might be, age is just a number. Let me tell you about how I'm a great fit for this role. I'm familiar with SharePoint. I understand your product. I worked for one of your competitors about 5 years ago. I think I can still bring a book of business, blah, 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 blah. When did you graduate from college? I think you're asking if my skills and education are fresh. So let me tell you about some of the recent courses I've taken, my most recent certification. So don't automatically assume the worst. Assume they're unskilled interviewers who don't understand they've stepped in fraught territory. Help them be better interviewers. Save the interview and shift it to a more productive line of conversation. I think that this graciousness, thinking on your feet, will reflect well on you, as well as you will give you an opportunity to put some hard facts out there for them in order to make your case for being the best candidate. So let's talk about overcoming objections. How have you kept your skills updated? I'm an avid reader on business leadership topics, and as a CPA, I'm required to keep my skills fresh to maintain my credentials. Or, as I've mentioned earlier in the interview, I use LinkedIn Learning and Udemy to upskill and learn some new tools and technology while I was in transition. Are you good with technology? Well, I know your system uses XYZ. I've been using that at my current company for the last 5 years. And I also recently received certification and completed several online courses in QRS and TUV. All right, I see somebody has a question. Randy, so I've been applying for a few positions from LinkedIn, and when it takes you to a different site, some of them require you to put a date on your bachelor's. Is that something you've seen? Any recommendations? That's interesting. I would be curious to know where exactly they're located, because this must be about 5 years ago, Lisa Madigan, who was the Attorney General at the time, noticed that places like Indeed and Career Builder were asking for people to put that. And she notified them in a letter, advisory letter, telling them that they really ought not to be asking about this because it's setting themselves up for a lawsuit for age discrimination. And she didn't think that was appropriate. So I guess I'm surprised to see that. LinkedIn and Indeed, interesting. So I could report those jobs. Well, I'm not sure that would be the route I would take. You could, possibly reach out to the EEOC and, see if they're taking notes on that. Again, a lot of this may depend on where the company is located. For example, in New York City, it's required that you post the salary with jobs. It's not required in Illinois. It gives you an option to provide feedback, not reporting per se. Yeah, then okay. I think that if it offers you the opportunity to provide feedback, you could do that. I would be interested to know if the person reviewing it would also see that feedback. So I guess I'd have to give that some thought, know a little bit more. Let's see, did somebody else ask a question? Okay, I think that they were from Randy. Okay. So this is another reason why you need to constantly be learning. You constantly need to be keeping your skills up to date. So I would encourage you to whether you're unemployed, underemployed, or you're considering a transition, start taking some online classes to learn more about fields that you're interested in and that help you develop transferable skills. I just think that's really important. Technology is evolving so very quickly. volunteering is a great opportunity, in fact, to build skills. I know that in my job, we recently, well, about a year and a half ago, adopted a new website. And I had never, had any experience with WordPress. So I just jumped in, started working with it. And then we also got a Google ad grant, and I wasn't that familiar with Google Ads. So I reached out to a client that I knew actually had some experience, and I had him, and he was unemployed. I had him help me understand Google ad grants, help me understand how to do the targeting, keywords, things like that. And so now that's something he can put on his resume. He coached and helped another organization apply for, set up, and launch their Google ad grant. I mean, that's powerful. So volunteer work, a great way to build your skills. So there are other questions that might come up, and actually these are questions that our clients have definitely been asked. These two for sure. One of them is, how would you feel about reporting to a 30-year-old? Pause. I know that diverse teams with respect to age, culture, and gender perform better, and I enjoy being part of a high-performing team. I enjoy learning from people of all ages, and I believe they can learn from something from me as well. How long will you stay here? I enjoy working, and I feel like I'm still learning and growing in this profession. I intend to stay in the workforce as long as I can because I can't imagine not being productive. I have a passion for my work, and I enjoy being part of a productive team. Positive, polished, forward-looking. And honestly, actions talk louder than words. So if you're being interviewed by somebody who, let's say you're 50, you're being interviewed by someone who's maybe 35, not unusual, a lot of recruiters are young, treat them as a peer, be respectful. Don't say, oh, my daughter went to your university. No, that's not how you act with a peer. Look for common points of interest. Treat them as an equal, and that's going to create a good vibe between you, and going to help them feel reassured that you would perform well working with younger people. So I think this is a good time for us to talk a little bit about what each of you all are experiencing. And I would love to hear more about each person's experience, what they're encountering in the job search. And I think it's a good time where we can share some experiences and learn from each other. So Randy, you seem to be pretty engaged and out there and networking and interviewing. So tell me, what are some of the experiences that you're having? Uh, oh, Randy, no, I can't hear you. Maybe you can put it in the chat if not.
Let me see if I can.
Okay.
Doesn't look like I'm able to unmute you, Randy. So is it possible to put your answers in the chat?
Great. He said no problem. Wonderful. Okay, so he's been in customer service for about 20 years, recently downsized by an organization. Okay. So how has your experience been in the job market so far? It sounds like you're actively applying for positions and interviewing. What's working for you? Anything you can share with others? Because frankly, you seem very on top of things to me. if anybody else would like to share. Oh, he said, hit the nail on the head with a positive mojo. Absolutely. That's how you're going to attract people, is being positive, being forward-looking, being proactive. Well, Randy, I must say, you do seem very on top of things. I would be curious to know if you all would share some of the things you're experiencing, or what are one or two things that you're going to take away from this that you're going to do differently, or how it might impact your job search, so I can share it with others. I left this time at the end so we could chat a little bit and see if we can do some support and encouragement and share tips with each other. Because oftentimes job seekers in the market are great resources for learnings and seeing trends. On the final part of what I've been experiencing, there's not always a lot of feedback. You know, Randy, that's true, and which is unfortunate. The reason for that is I think a lot of employers are worried about providing feedback for fear that they'll get sued. So that's probably going to continue to be a challenge. What I think might be helpful is to, after you, Roberta, I'll be right with you. What I would do is I would type up right after the interview, I would type up your notes, and I would make a note of, if you know, part of it is, are you connecting? Are you clicking with them? And it's kind of a intuitive thing, like, do they get you? Do you feel like they're asking questions? Do they seem excited? Do they seem disconnected? And try and do a little bit of a postmortem yourself. Because oftentimes, like, I've had 2 interview experiences with recruiters, one where I felt like we totally got each other and she absolutely recommended me for the position. And then another one where I felt like, yeah, he was going through the motions. Yeah. So I don't know if there was an internal candidate involved, but yeah, Randy, it is very frustrating to hear absolutely nothing. So I would encourage you to take some notes so that you can look back at it, and then a couple of days later, look at it and just see, was there a click point? Was there something where there wasn't a connect? I would also send a thank you email and restate your value proposition. Then I might, at the end of the interview, before you guys part, ask them for a timeline, send them a thank you letter or email, restate some of the key points, and then I might follow up at whatever point they say you should hear from them, in a week or 2 weeks. And I might do a thank you and 2 follow-ups and then let it go. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I feel that if they interview you, at the very least, they do owe you, you know, a yes or no. Absolutely. That thank you note is not only to thank them for their time, but it's your final sales pitch. Roberta, yes, how can I help you?
I
Hi,
think,
Anita.
Hi.
I say hello. I was one of your clients.
Yes, I know. I recognize your name. How are you?
I'm very good. So it was very useful when I was over there, and I went through part-time position, and finally I got what I wanted, and so I'm very happy.
Good.
The reason I joined today is because there is a lot of instability, and it's just I want to be sure that I'm always networking, just in case.
Exactly.
And what I found out that I was very active on LinkedIn, and then when I had a job, I stopped. And then I realized, no, I always have to be very active in networking. And
absolutely.
Myself, because you never know. You never know.
Roberta, and especially after the pandemic and the going into what seems to be a recession, you're right. We never know. And it's important to cultivate. Think of your network as a garden. You have to keep it watered, fertilized, and it will pay back in dividends. You're absolutely right.
I realized that, yeah, we need to always be very active, very active in be connected with people. But by the way, during the pandemic, for me was very useful, because I was teaching online and I had more time to go to meetings
Yes.
Usually are very, very expensive in person because I have to travel and I need a sponsor. But now I was able to attend and network a lot. So
Absolutely. And you know what? I noticed a lot of universities were making their classes available for free during the pandemic to help people. So it was a terrific time. There were several conferences that normally charge I was able to go to because they were free. They were made available by Teams or Zoom or what have you. So yeah, it was a very rich time for, you know, personal, professional development, Roberta. I absolutely agree. Oh my gosh, it's so good to hear from you.
yeah, and also I agree. I found myself, because I'm teaching and with younger colleagues, but because I'm older, the experience really matter. And
Yes.
yeah, and that is yeah, it matters, and then it's good.
Yes, experience matters. And during the pandemic, you know, folks like you and I, we've been through the Great Recession, you know, we've dealt with a variety of ups and downs, and we were positioned to respond and roll with it. We weren't thrown because we'd had a lot of life experiences. And that's what makes older workers so incredibly valuable. Thank you for sharing that, Roberta. That's very, very gracious of you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks to you. Thanks to your organization. It was very useful at the time. Yeah.
I'm so glad. Thank you. So before we, I see several people mentioned that LinkedIn was helpful. I hope it encourages you to create a profile if you haven't. It's not intimidating, and I think you'll enjoy interacting with people because honestly, I think work is going to continue to be hybrid. I don't think we're going to go back to totally in person in most cases, and it's important that we learn how to navigate the virtual world and the real world, so to speak. And so we've got about 2 minutes, and I thought I'd check in and see if anybody had any questions, any observations, anything they'd like to share with the group.
Please go ahead and add any of your questions in the Q&A or the chat. I also wanted to mention the Glenview Public Library does offer access to LinkedIn Learning with your Glenview library card.
Great.
So definitely check with your home library to see if they offer that. There's lots of great courses on there. And through the library, you can access it for free.
Absolutely. That's one, I mean, you got to have a library card. You got to use the library. I mean, it's such a fantastic resource. And again, it saves you money. You don't have to pay for the LinkedIn sort of the enhanced package. No need to do that. You don't need it, and you can get the learnings through the library. Again, get active with the library. They're a gift.
So it looks like we got a question from Carla.
Oh, okay.
Apart from LinkedIn, where else can I publish my resume?
Okay, I think there's a couple options you've got. I would definitely make sure that you have a good LinkedIn profile. I think other options could include like creating a profile on Indeed. I know when I was looking for the communications coordinator in the fall, people who had profiles and had their resumes up, Indeed offered me the opportunity to invite people who met my criteria to apply for my position. And I did. So that helped me find some people that maybe didn't see my posting. So I would create that profile on Indeed so that people can find you. I also would encourage you to give some thought to looking at, for example, professional associations. The Association Forum, which is the association of all the professional associations, they have a job board. You don't have to be a member to look. And I think you can create a profile even if you're not a member. I think that would be worthwhile if you're considering any kind of position that might be found in the association world. There are all kinds of associations that have job boards, and they often are open to people who aren't members. And I think those would be good places to look for jobs and where they allow you to create a profile so people can find you.
Do we have any other last minute questions? Please go ahead and put those in the chat or the Q&A.
Claire will send you the PowerPoint and the workbook. And in the PowerPoint, you'll find my LinkedIn and then also my email. And I'll put that in the chat as well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to chat with you and answer any questions that maybe felt awkward asking in a group.
I'm seeing lots of thank yous. So thank you very much for this great presentation. You shared lots of excellent tips for navigating the
pleasure.
job search.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. It was a pleasure to meet you all. And Randy, all the best. You know, you're a go-getter. He was like one step ahead of me on everything in the presentation. He's like, what about this? What about this? So I love that. I love it when people are engaged and they're sharing with other people. So thank you.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us tonight, and good luck with your job search.
Absolutely.